In this episode of Alien Agenda, Colonel Gene delves into more credible post-Roswell UFO sightings. Military witnesses were often silenced, data confiscated, and sightings dismissed. The episode raises serious questions. If these were hoaxes, why the cover-up? Let's consider what the government might be hiding. Here's Colonel Gene.
It's Colonel Gene again with another episode of Alien Agenda. Today we're going to continue our look at some of these very credible UFO sightings that occurred after Roswell in 1947. On January the 6th, 1969, one of the most important people to have witnessed UFOs was former President Jimmy Carter. The sighting occurred when he was at Levely, Georgia, to give an address to the Lions Club. He and approximately 20 people who were with him saw the UFO above the horizon. On September 18th, 1973, he filed a report with the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon. He was reported to have made a comment such as, "This is the darndest thing I ever seen." During the 1976 presidential campaign, Carter pledged that if he won the presidency, he would seek to have the information that the government had released to the public about UFOs. As it turned out, President Carter was unable to keep his pledge, and when asked by reporters, he said, "Certain things are too sensitive for national security to be released." On January the 18th, 1978, during the early morning, a flight over Fort Dix of a UFO was made. An MP on duty saw something at the edge of the runway. It turned and ran away. It appeared to be a small being with a large head, slender body. The MP panicked and took out his .45 and shot at the being several times. It fled over the fence between the two air bases. The MP contacted Sergeant Major Morris and was told to go to the gate. Sergeant Morris and his colleague found the alien dead along the runway. They reported the body had a strong odor of ammonia. Later that day, a team from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base arrived in a C-141 cargo ship and put the body in a silver-colored box and took off. Morris and his companions were warned by security not to talk about the incident or they would be court-martialed. 2 days later, Morris and the others were taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They underwent extensive interrogation and again were warned not to mention this incident to anyone. Upon return to McGuire, Morris debriefed his commander, and nothing more was said about the incident until many years later. Another witness, a Major George Filer, talked eventually to ABC News reporter Kathleen Raymer in Washington and to David Rupert in New York. He told these reporters that about the alien incident in New Jersey and verified that there was a dead body found after having been shot by an airman on the base. August 1980, a former colonel, name withheld, told Kurt Martin that he had seen 2 live aliens at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in an underground area. The colonel was dying of cancer and passed away several weeks after meeting with Kurt Martin. December the 27th and 29th, 1980. On December the 27th, at Bentwaters Royal Air Force Base, a joint base between the United States and Great Britain, where nuclear weapons were stored, 3 enlisted persons saw lights in the sky. What they described was a 9-foot triangular ship resting on the ground in the forest. The surface was black with writing on the sides that looked like Egyptian hieroglyphics. Staff Sergeant Jim Henniston went to touch the triangle and it immediately disappeared. The lights continued in the sky for some time. 2 nights later, a report came of a second sighting. In both cases, the deputy base commander, a Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, was notified. On the second night, he accompanied several enlisted persons and saw strange lights in the sky as well. They also found 3 indentations on the ground in an exact triangle. They made plaster molds of the impressions, and it was determined that because of the hardness of the ground, impressions a couple inches deep could only have been made by a very heavy object. There was a moderate amount of radiation in these 3 depressions, as well as on a tree that was nearby. Above the area where they saw the triangle craft, it was as if the trees had been sheared off from something coming through to the ground. The excuse for what they observed on these 2 dates in 1980 was that they were from lights of a lighthouse about 10 miles away. The eyewitnesses said this was impossible given the fact that the object moved and the fact that they found these 3 impressions on the ground. One of the enlisted men that went to the site on the second night in December 1980 was Airman Larry Warren. He has since come forward and said that not only did he see the craft, but he also observed 3 humanoid-type beings around the craft. Lieutenant Colonel Haupt, on his second sighting, carried with him a tape recorder on which he recorded his observations, and he has that recording yet today. Haupt confirmed he saw the lights and the impressions on the ground, but he did not see any alien beings. He did say that one of the objects in the sky emitted a beam of light from underneath the craft to the ground. In mid-August 1956, there were other reports of spacecraft over this same base, but authorities dismissed them. In 1983, Mike Reynolds, his name was actually changed, met with a retired Air Force major who worked his entire career at Area 51. The major claimed he was aware that aliens had crashed and that we had reverse engineered some of the technology, and he had written a book about his experience at the base. The major was to be interviewed by Reynolds about his experience. Just prior to the interview, he got a visit from several men, and the interview was canceled. Reynolds had the major's book in his car and intended to have it published. However, he was so shaken up that he went into his motel room and left the book in the trunk of the car. When he went back out to retrieve the book, it was gone. Later, he was again approached by these men and told never to publish anything, or he and his family would be punished. When Mike Reynolds returned home, he found that the major no longer would talk with him, and Mike abandoned his plans to publish or talk about this incident. The people who do not believe in the alien existence will discount this account, like many others. But what we have to ask ourselves is, why would this Air Force officer lie about his career and simply make up this story? We also have a reporter who was interested in helping this officer publish his recollections. All of a sudden, all of these people reportedly will talk. If the purpose of the major's book was simply to make a buck, why was he threatened, as he claimed that he was? And why was the book never published? On November the 17th, 1986, during Japan Airlines Flight 1628 over Reykjavik at 7:11, a pilot, a Captain Turshu, who had over 30,000 of experience, as well as a co-pilot who was a former fighter pilot with more than 10,000 hours, encountered 2 aircraft to the left of their plane. These 2 craft were going at the same speed as the 747. The 2 objects veered off and assumed a stacked position in front of the airline. The 2 crafts were flying as if they had overcome gravity. Each object was a square-shaped craft, but the traffic controller at Anchorage could not confirm these 2 craft on their short-range radar. After 3 minutes, these objects assumed a side-by-side configuration, which they maintained for another 10 minutes, accompanying the airliner. The 2 craft then abruptly left at 7:23, moving to a point below the horizon to the east. The captain used his onboard radar and confirmed that the two craft were approximately 7.5 nautical miles distant. The captain reported that the speed at which these two craft moved was like anything he had ever seen. As the city lights of Fairbanks began to illuminate objects in the sky, the captain saw another huge ship to his left. The object was approximately twice the size of an aircraft carrier and flying at 31,000 feet. The captain decided to execute a 360-degree turn, hoping the gigantic craft would just continue forward. However, the aircraft mirrored the turn of the 747. This continued for 31 minutes, and the entire sighting lasted more than 55 minutes. After Japan Flight 628 arrived safely at Anchorage, the captain filed a formal Federal Aviation Administration report, together with the data from his onboard radar and tapes, with the conversations he had with the tower at Anchorage. The data was sent to the Regional Technical Center in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where Vice Admiral Don Engen reviewed it. John Culligan, of the FAA Chief of Accidents, saw the material and said it was the first time he had recorded data on UFOs in his possession. After watching the radar images and listening to the radio recordings, they were told never to speak about this incident again. Quote, "It never took place," end quote. The FAA report did reveal that the captain had made other reports of sightings on two separate occasions, one in January 29, 1987, about a flight, and observed 50 fast-moving aircraft. And though their onboard computer was turned on, they found that the speed with which these craft were moving was approximately 3,600 miles per hour. If this sighting reported by the pilot with the accompanying radar and voice exchanges were a lie, why were the recordings and data confiscated as they later were? Why were they told, again, this incident never took place? If all this was a hoax and a lot of hot air, it seems hard to understand the reaction of the federal officials to hide these incidents. I hope you've enjoyed looking into some more of these sightings. Please tell your friends about our podcast, Alien Agenda. Until the next time, this is Colonel Gene signing off, and please be safe.
Ever encountered a UFO? We want to hear your story. Email Deborah Wallace at deborah@pcm.agency. In The Alien Step In, a secret Chinese mission alters the past, forcing the U.S. to intervene, unleashing a chain reaction that draws the attention of an advanced alien race. Commander Sansa Tebek issues a warning: Earth must stop all time travel. But instead of force, he offers a solution: a delegation to planet Galner, where a mysterious gift awaits, one that could change how we understand Earth's history forever. Find out what happens in The Alien Step In, available now on Amazon and major book retailer. Learn more at GenePAbelBooks.com.